Well, good morning all. Welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Community of Halifax. This is the first of our informal summer services. I don't see any strangers today, so I don't need to introduce myself or to welcome the strangers. And you all know that through both our Universalist and Unitarian heritages, we recognize that the truths of the universe are too complex to be summed up in any one religious creed. So instead of focusing on rules and set formulae, we draw wisdom and meaning from many sources and work at cultivating relationships, building community, and taking responsible action in the here and now. Before we enter our service, we pause to acknowledge that we're meeting in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral home of the Mi'kmaq people. Scott Wood has a message for us.
Pilasi, welcome. As she said, we are meeting on the today in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people who lived here for millennia before European settlers arrived. With their arrival, they brought worldview, culture, and values greatly at odds with the indigenous people who had welcomed them. Nevertheless, treaties were entered into spelling out how they could coexist. However, these treaties were violated by the settlers as colonialization and subjugation was pursued. This has caused great injustice to our indigenous people and their descendants. We are all treaty people and are called on to live in right relationship with them and find reconciliation with our indigenous people. True reconciliation, however, is more than an apology. It recognizes that we cannot simply undo the injustices of the past, as their consequences have become complexly intertwined with every economic, social, and political structure that is modern Canada. The path to reconciliation involves at least three dimensions: the developing of a deeper understanding and respect for the Indigenous worldview, culture, and values. Two, bringing them into the national dialogue and decision-making processes as equal partners at every level of governance. And three, finding ways to share the wealth of Canada such that they're justly compensated for the losses that they have suffered over the centuries. We are also called on to act on two other related ways. One, to live in right relationship with the Black community, other people of color, and marginalized people, other marginalized people who also have been wounded and disadvantaged by racism and discrimination. And secondly, to live in right relationship with Mother Earth. We should listen carefully to the wisdom of Canada's Indigenous people whose relationship to the natural world offers important guidance to us as we seek to address, for example, the climate crisis. This climate crisis is an existential challenge to us since we are dependent on the bounty and services of the natural world for all the things that permit us to survive and enjoy well-being. May we find a path forward that leads us to live in harmony with one another and with Mother Earth. Walam, and thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Part of our regular Sunday service, informal or not, is to light a chalice as a symbol of our commitment. I light it today with these words. Kath lights it for me with these words. We gather here to seek the truth, to wonder at the mystery that gave us birth, and to listen for the wisdom that guides us in the quiet of this moment. Thank you, Kath. The first hymn this morning is number 301 in the Gray Hymn Book, Touch the Earth, Reach the Sky. Rise or remain seated as you choose.
Touch the earth, reach the sky, walk on shores while spirits fly, over the ocean, over the land, our faith a quest to understand. Touch the earth, reach the sky, children ask the reasons why. In our lives the answers show, and by our love they learn and grow. Touch the earth, reach the sky, all are born and all shall die. Life's the time left in between to follow a star, to build a dream. Touch the earth, reach the sky, hug the laughter, feel the cry. May we see where we can give, for this is what it means to live. Touch the earth, reach the sky, soar with courage ever high, spirits joining as we fly, to touch the earth, to reach the sky.
And whether the service is formal or informal, an important part of our communal life is that we pause to share our joys and sorrows and our worries and our complex truths. Thus we may rejoice with the happy, comfort those in pain, and support those dealing with the complexities of life. Whatever you wish to share in community, now is the moment to do so. Come and light a candle, or someone will bring you the microphone, and then I'll light the candle for you. it's not on, Ronnie.
We also been notified of stuff.
Hang on. To go.
Okay, Sylvia's.
Oh, Sylvia, you're sticking around.
Good morning. I have some different news about Glenda this morning. She went home 9 days ago. She's getting dialysis 3 times a week. She's getting all kinds of child care, home care, and that's the news.
Marilyn's coming.
Did you light a candle yet, Marilyn?
I did lit one for Glenda.
For Glenda?
Hmm?
For Glenda?
I did.
Jeez, don't believe it.
I lit the candle, honest, I lit the candle.
I hope that this will go in the newsletter next month, but for now, I just want to tell you some good news. So you all know Norris, and then he brought Nehruz, his fiancée, and they got married and had a baby. Well, Thursday, Nehruz's sister and her 5 children arrived from Lebanon. Very happy occasion. So. Norris and Nehruz have 2 houses, so the sister and her children will be in the Windsor house. Norris and Nehruz have moved to Lower Sackville.
Hi, I just want to share a big joy. That's my little great-grandson, Alexander Perlinger. And I am very happy to be a great-grandmother now.
Good for you, thank you. Yeah, proud of you. Anyone else? We're proud of you too, Faith.
I'd like to express my joy at seeing the landscaping out there this morning. And the bench, beautiful, beautiful.
Hi, Amy Moonshadow, she, her, and I would just like to say that I have celebrated another year of life, and the anniversary of my birth was at 6:07 yesterday morning.
Another cancer in the house. Okay. That's the zodiac sign.
And I'm going to light one myself for thanks to all the people that have helped me through all the crises of the last few weeks. I don't know where I'd be without kind people. And there's, it won't light. I tried it. And one more, for all the things we didn't say, but thought we might.
Oh. Takes there's one for you and for all the thoughts.
As I said, the thing is there that does a better job now.
I see it. I see it.
Yeah, this does a better job.
It had
but-
run out of.
No, you didn't. Where did you find it?
The thing was there, it was the tapers that are in the candle cupboard.
Well, so often I sit there and think about things I might have said, and so I realize that line about the silent sanctuary of the heart is what we're all feeling. So that was the last candle. We'll pause for a brief moment of contemplation. There is a backstory to this service. This beautiful children's book was found by a member who brought it in for the Religious Exploration Library, but thought it had adult content. The subject is the life of Khalil Gibran, a Lebanese-American novelist, poet, artist, philosopher. Born in Lebanon in 1883, he died in New York in 1931. He wrote in both Arabic and English. His most famous work, The Prophet, was translated into many languages and remains in print today. Who am I? Who are you? We come from many worlds and many different histories to be together this morning. We all have a story or stories. Stories shape our community. How they are told matters. Gibran's story is more complicated than the children's version. I will try to amplify his story as we go along. If you could move forward, it's going to be difficult to show you the beautiful book, which is its great charm. I can come and sit in front and hold the book and wave it around. And as I read, feel free to interrupt. Riley is going to try and manage the camera. Unfortunately, I don't have the facility to copy things online for projecting. It is what it is, and 21st century has its problems. The book was written by a Lebanese-American woman for her own children, and so the picture she's painting for her children is one of identity and aspiration that leaves out a lot of other things. So there once was a boy, shot from a bow like an arrow. Strong and straight, he flew across the world, connecting many people with the power of his words. But not right away.
People on Zoom are having
Okay. At first, he was Khalil Gibran, small, shy boy who barely spoke and lived in a land of deep valleys, snowy mountains, and ancient trees. Khalil loved his country, Lebanon, even though its people were like two headwinds crashing together. Christians swept all their strength in one direction, while the Druze gusted in the other. Khalil's Maronite family was often in trouble, and he wished he knew what to do. And I spent, some of my neighbors I had two Lebanese families side by side across the street from me. One family were Roman Catholic and the other were Maronite Christians. And I never dared ask what the difference was, but it was obvious that this divided these two families despite their national heritage. And reading good old Wikipedia to find out what the Maronite Christians believed, it's a Christian version dating back to the 5th century when a Saint Maron Christianized the heathen of that area of the Middle East. And if you read the history of the Maronites, the Middle East that we see today as an area of conflict has been that way since the 5th century and before. One set of people swept through, another swept through. Many people consider the Maronite Christians to be Christian Arabs, but that's not true either. It's really hard to pin down, but the big Lebanese church off Dutch Village Road is a Maronite church. And certainly the faith continues in Halifax to this day. Gibran escaped into the woods. There the silence of the great cedar trees inspired him as he stared up into the branches that had held strong against many winds over thousands of years. He felt a secret hope bloom inside. Shall my heart become a tree heavy laden with fruit, that I may gather and give unto them? Someday soon it would, but not yet. And there is our boy with the trees. On one climb through the woods, he fell off a cliff, like an arrow shot all wrong. He broke his shoulder, and his parents tied a wooden cross to his back to straighten his bones. Khalil healed in silence and stillness, thinking, praying, dreaming. When people came to his home, his mother would look at him kindly, hold a finger to her lips, and say to the visitor, "Hush, he's not here." And there our boy falls, and his family puts him back together. It's such a beautiful illustrations. Khalil listened as his people's great fear of one another turned into a terrible storm, and even his secret hope to spread love and understanding could not stop horrible things from happening. Soon the Gibran family lost their home and everything they owned, and Khalil's father was sent to jail. It seems his father might have been a tax collector. Khalil, his mother, and his 3 siblings could not stay in Lebanon anymore. They would take a ship to America. Khalil was afraid to leave his home and father, but he reached inside and held on to his secret hope. The sea that calls all things unto her calls me, and I must embark. And so he sets off. Interesting the way the immigrants are portrayed. The stereotypes of the early 20th century. First, they crossed the Mediterranean Sea, the waves glowing with blue sunlight. Next, they sailed the deeper, darker Atlantic Ocean, which murmured like a giant in its sleep. Oh, yeah? That's not how we always hear the Atlantic. It doesn't seem to murmur. Khalil's family arrived in Boston, a loud, crowded city where people spoke Arabic, English, and many more languages. Evidently, at that time, Boston was the largest Arabic-speaking community in North America. Who knew? Khalil attended the Quincy School. He was placed in a special class for immigrant children, and his teachers shortened and changed his name. You remember it started out Gibran, Khalil Gibran? Now he was just Khalil Gibran. And reflect on how we change. Think of all the families you know whose family name changed when they arrived in North America and somebody couldn't spell and shortened it to John. So that happened to Gibran too. Now when he looked in the mirror, he saw two boys, Khalil Gibran, the Arab American, and Gibran Khalil Gibran, the Lebanese boy who missed his father and the snowy mountains of home. Deep is your longing for the land of your memories. And there he sees in his mirror his family lived in a crowded place called the South End, where 100 immigrant children from all over the world often played in a single alley together, like a flock of swooping birds. His mother saved enough money to open a family store by peddling goods, but her hard work was looked down upon by many people in America. Khalil saw that Boston was as divided as Lebanon, only here the wealthy crashed with the poor. Khalil watched his mother leave their house every day with a 50-pound bag of linens and lace on her back. He was proud of how hard she worked, but not proud of how people spit at his family's differences. He wished he knew what to do. There are quotes from him on every page, and this one is, "He only bent his head, and those who stood near saw his tears falling." So there are the haughty people staring down on his mother. Khalil knew deep down that his secret hope was the only way to best this great, mean-spirited fear of difference. But he couldn't find the words in English or Arabic, So he began to draw. His teachers saw something special in his pictures right away, and they sent him to a museum where he met artists, including a photographer named Fred Holland Day, who took many photographs of Khalil and helped him develop his art. Off to art school. Khalil's drawings became stronger and more enchanting. At first, he gave them away to anyone who needed them. Then he sold his pictures to a publisher who printed some of them on the covers of books. Khalil felt this might be his moment to share his secret hope, but his mother disagreed. She worried that too much success would change Khalil's young heart. Like a stable bow, she shot her arrow of a son back to Lebanon to study in the capital city of Beirut. So there's the boy drawing.
What year is this, Mary Lou? Because Beirut was
My crib sheet doesn't give a specific date, but it would have been around 1900. Because they landed in Boston in 1895. So it would be circa 1900. And the school that he went to in Lebanon, in Beirut, was the Maronite College. Beirut was bold, one of the oldest cities in the world. Khalil studied hard and learned how to write in Arabic, but he felt that his classes were too religious, and his spirit rebelled. Khalil wanted to believe in all religions and all people. Alone and without his nest shall the eagle fly across the sun. So this is a representation of him at the college in Beirut. Can you see Mitchell? It seems that he could, like many people, he could speak and read a language, but not necessarily write it. And if you think back, it's the historian in me, I know, but when Sunday schools were started in the early 19th century, they taught people to read, but not to write. And the reason they did that was so they could read the Bible, but they didn't want them to be able to write and complain or argue or... So it's not uncommon. You know, we think of all these things as going together, but in fact they don't. And so that for him to learn to write in Arabic was a whole other skill, even though he already had the language. During the summers in Lebanon, he escaped to his old hometown in the mountains. There beneath the great cedars that had held strong for thousands of years, he began to write. And he says, "We are the seeds of the tenacious plant, and it is in our ripeness and our fullness of heart that we are given to the wind and are scattered." And there he is in his mountain, a small figure starting to write. So he went back to Boston to share his message. As soon as he arrived, he learned that his sister had passed away. His brother departed next, and then he lost his mother. They all died from different illnesses. One was tuberculosis, another one was cancer. Khalil's sadness was like a wall between two gardens, but he still wanted to honor his family's lives with his secret hope. And his quote, "Know that all the blessed dead are standing about you and watching." And there his secret garden. So this is somewhere around 1905 or 6. Khalil began to write and draw more than ever. He moved to the electric shining heart of America, New York City. And there his secret hope began to take a new shape, a strong, straight arrow, one that would not be turned away by wind. He wrote poems to connect the people of Lebanon, and he wrote poems to help Americans come together in celebration of their many differences. And he says, work is love made visible. Maybe. In the Big Apple. Khalil's secret hope became a book called The Prophet. And this is where a lot of time gets skipped in this story. He had a couple of female benefactors who sent him to Paris to study art. He was in Paris for 3 years, came back to America, continued to write, formed an Arabic language writing group in New York, continued to write both in Arabic and in English. So the arrival of the prophet is a sudden thing in this book, but not a sudden thing in his life. I think this is just people sharing his words. Oops, sorry. My apologies to everybody on Zoom. Khalil Gibran became an arrow shot true, an arrow made from the strength of Lebanese cedars and feathered by the spirit of American independence. And right now, as you read this, his words still fly across the world in more than 40 different languages. I think it's now up to 100. And through many crashing winds to bring all who read them straight to the heart of hope. And that's intended to be the end. Now, faithful Wikipedia tells us that he wrote very little in the last 6 or 7 years of his life, and that he essentially died of alcoholism. Not what you tell your children when you want them to be proud of their heritage, but part of a life, and in a sense understandable in the life that he did live. So I'd be happy to, as much as I can, answer any questions.
I think the prophet was published about 1921, 2 or 3.
28.
Was it 28? So very shortly before his death.
Sorry?
Shortly before his death, then.
What?
He died at 31.
Let me check. I did check the. No, you were right. It was 23.
23.
One of his other diseases was tuberculosis in one lung, which is what one of his siblings had died of. Marilyn's got the camera if you want, anybody wants to, the camera, the microphone.
I'll bring it to you if you have questions. Yellow on or off?
Yellow should be off.
Someday we'll get it. Any other questions? Scott's got more.
I think we've all used that book many, many times, dipped into it for all kinds of occasions. I have a copy on my shelf, and when I'm called on to do something kind of meditative, or I've often looked in the book for an inspiration, and always enjoyed it. I've seen it in Norwegian and in Spanish as well.
I admit I've never read it.
As an adoptive parent, I've always loved, your children are not your children. They are life's, I should know it by heart, they are life's longing for itself, and something about shooting them forth with the bow and arrow, which just really means a lot as an adoptive parent, because it reminds you that, you know, your children come to you in many ways, and they're really not yours to decide on their life.
Well, I've actually never read it. I've heard about it, but never bothered to read it. I don't know why, but now I'm curious enough to pick up a copy. Yeah, there probably is.
You've probably heard one of the poems from every wedding that you ever went to, the oak and the cypress. Yeah.
By the time I was studying literature in the late 1950s, the prophet was dismissed as sentimental claptrap, not worth reading. But obviously, the world disagrees with the literary scholars.
What happened was claptrap accelerated in character throughout the time, and by comparison,
Thanks, Marilyn. Anyway, thank you all for your patience as we went through a kind of an odd presentation. So please join in singing hymn 159. This is my song, which I think is appropriate. You'll all know the tune.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for meeting with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
A small item of domestic necessity, the offering. Our community is made possible by the offering of our individual time, skills, commitments, and gifts. Nobody's worth and dignity is in any way measured by the manner in which they offer their commitment, but we do need money to continue our communal life, paint the walls, keep the doors open, so the basket will be passed. I will extinguish the chalice with Gibran's words. Let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you. Love one another, and make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. As we leave this place, may peace be in our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will to move to justice, and may the love of truth forever guide us. Bang.
May I make two quick announcements? Just a reminder that next Saturday at 2 o'clock, we will have a celebration of life for Norm Sabowitz. And next Sunday, I'm the service leader, and we're going to be talking with newcomers. And I've invited several, and they've all said yes, so there's probably going to be a dozen newcomers. So please, I want a dozen of you in the place too. Thank you.
And the other thing I forgot was that Joe asked me to read his announced thank yous. Thank you to Mitchell for picking the colors and coordinating the painting of the sanctuary. Thanks to Mitchell, Max, Joe, Shakor, Andrea for putting paint to roller. A special thanks to Max for his expertise in replacing the light fixtures. Always a big thanks to Kath for opening the church and making coffee for us all on Sundays and making sure I had everything here. And lastly, thanks to our volunteer board for managing the day-to-day life of our community. And my thanks to Carol Westall for being our musician today. That's it.